Hello, everyone. My name is Mary Cole Watson, and I'm a local author from Cleveland Heights, Ohio. I am a semi-retired director of reading and reading specialist, but currently I work at Richmond Heights Elementary School in Richmond Heights, Ohio. How I came to write Wisdom Warriors, or how I was inspired to write Wisdom Warriors, happened one day when I was teaching a high school reading class. A female student interrupted one of my culturally relevant lessons and pleaded with me to write stories to help African American young people feel good about themselves, the way I helped her and her classmates feel good about themselves. And the rest of the class enthusiastically agreed. And then a few months later, when I was cleaning my home, I had what is called an aha moment. I had always wanted to write a book, but was unsure of what the topic should be. I only knew that I wanted it to be a book that made a real difference in children's lives. And here was this young woman telling me precisely the book I was supposed to write. I was supposed to write a book about the challenges of racism. Now, some adults think that children don't really think that much about racism, but social scientists would disagree with you, and so would the Pediatric Society. Just the other day in the New York Times, a reporter stated that children recognize racial differences as young as 6 months old, and by grade school, they are well aware of the inequality between races. And then the Pediatric Society for Infectious Disease has stated that structural racism is more damaging to the health and self-esteem of African American children more than any disease, including COVID-19. And so I went up to my computer and I sat there, and I didn't leave my seat until the rough draft to my very first story, Culture, was born. So Wisdom Warriors is a collection of 22 short stories. I'm told through the eyes of Grandma Mary and Grandpa Marv. It is told through their eyes because, according to African tradition, the elders are supposed to help guide young people so that they don't make the same mistakes that they made when they were their age, but more importantly, to help them with the challenges of racism, because they will face these challenges throughout their life. And they want Sky to feel proud of who she is. And so they alternate picking Sky up each day from school, and Sky generally has an issue that needs resolved. Now, when she's picked up by her grandparents, they talk about other things first. They may play a game or do a puzzle together, and then Sky will come up with a challenge that happened at school, and the grandparents will help her resolve her issue by focusing on the beauty of the phenomenal contributions of African American people so that they can build her self-esteem. And so I also wrote, the last story includes 28 lessons for African American youth, which was created because I was unimpressed with how African American history was taught in the schools. And so I created these lessons, which were published in the Plain Dealer many years ago, so that African American young people would be able to celebrate on their own through journaling or discussing with peers or family. These 28 lessons appear at the end of the last story. So now, everyone, I would like to read one of my stories. It is my favorite story because I am very passionate about reading. So here goes. Reading, Dr. Luke, the Reading Warrior. Sky's new principal, Dr. Ivy, was very popular. It's been a month into the school year, and Sky and her classmates couldn't wait to go to school every day. He was Whitney Magnet Public School's first African American principal. Every morning, Dr. Ivy is always at the door to greet them with an enormous smile as they enter the school building and when they leave to go home. He is a very tall man with a fade haircut. Dr. Ivy wears a really cool suit almost every day. He would always walk the hallways or around the cafeteria, making sure children find their way to class or eating their food instead of playing with it. He has made many changes to the way the school is run, but Sky's favorite is the morning ritual. Every day it starts with the PA announcements, and each day of the week begins differently. Word of the week, inspirational quotes, jokes, meaningful facts, and short inspirational passages are 5 ways to begin each day of the week. Volunteer students with motivating voices get to read the activities over the PA. Then the assistant principal makes brief general and special announcements. Today he announces that the first assembly of the year is the last hour of the school day. Important school assemblies take place any day of the week, but regular assemblies take place the last Friday of every month. After the final announcements, all the teachers have the students close their eyes and take 5 deep breaths through their nose and out their nose, and then after, think of one thing they are thankful for. Dr. Ivy has the teacher show the students the breathing exercises because it always calms the students that, combined with positive thinking, the students can focus solely on school and not have to think about the hardships that they deal with at home. Today is a regular assembly day. All the students walk quietly into the auditorium, and when all the students are seated, Miss Wilson, the school librarian, introduces the speaker of the first assembly of the year. The speaker is sitting in a chair near the podium that Miss Wilson is standing at. She introduces Professor Luke and explains that he is called Dr. Luke because he has the highest degree that you can earn in an educational career. The students applaud as Dr. Luke walks to the podium. Dr. Luke is tall, handsome, and the color of dark chocolate. He is wearing a shiny light gray suit, white shirt, a red tie with tiny white polka dots, and black shiny loafers. "Thank you for your introduction," he says to Miss Wilson as he stands at the podium. The students noticed immediately that Dr. Luke has an accent. It is clear and smooth like music. Dr. Luke had them all stand, touch their toes, reach tall, bend to the right and left, and then he told them to take a seat. The students figured out that Dr. Luke had them do those few movements so that they would be able to sit still and listen to his talk. Students, I am here to talk to you about my very favorite activity in life. You can probably guess what that is since the librarian introduced me. So I want everyone to say what that activity is at once. Opened the speaker. Once he counted down to 3, the audience yelled out, "Reading!" "Precisely," he cheered with victory pumps in the air. Then Dr. Luke turned on his laptop and a large map of Africa appeared. He said he is from Sierra Leone, West Africa, and pointed to it on the map. He then showed them many beautiful scenes from his country, as well as pictures of famous natural resources. Dr. Luke told them he wished he had more time to tell them about his beautiful country, its people and resources, but his talk today is about reading, because he said that he considers it the most valuable resource of all. Africans have always been famous for their oral stories, with lessons passed down from generation to generation, he said. Dr. Luke talked about the famous African folk tales that students still read today. He also talked about how African stories are different from American stories. African stories skip all around, trying to keep you focused or entertained. American stories usually start with a beginning, then the middle, and finally the end. And then Dr. Luke's tone turned serious. During slavery, slaves were not allowed to read or write and had to suffer all forms of torture if they were caught reading. So I want you to think for a few moments, why were slaves not permitted to read? Why do you think that was true? Dr. Luke said. Slave owners didn't want slaves to be smart, especially smarter than them, yelled Sky. Yes, Dr. Luke said, searching the audience for the wise voice. Then Jamil belted out, the owners knew slaves would be able to do things on their own. They knew they could escape easier, said Jared. Great answers, explained Dr. Luke. All of you touched on my main point, that the masters knew that it would be very difficult to control a smart man or woman. He went on to explain that the most important point he wanted to make is that if learning to read caused slaves to be tortured or killed, then the owners knew knowledge was the most valuable skill to be had. He asked the audience, by a show of hands, Tell me who likes to read. Less than half the students raised their hand. Not surprised by the response, Dr. Luke asked, how many of you select the first thing you see when you go clothes shopping? Not waiting for a response, he said, silly, right? He went on to tell the audience that it is silly to say that one doesn't like to read. He said that shopping is like reading. One must look around until they find the perfect book. There are books about absolutely anything and everything you love, as well as famous people you want to know more about. Librarians love to help you find the perfect book. If you fail to learn some of life's lessons found in books, you might be taken advantage of in life because you don't know the truth about things. You can't get all your answers from the internet, added Dr. Luke. Critical cultural information is missing from your school textbooks, so you need to read about it on your own, encouraged the professor. He guaranteed that if the students read about their culture, no one could ever make them feel inferior because they would know the truth about their own greatness. When we read about other cultures, we will come to understand, appreciate, respect, and value other people. He asked the audience, don't you think it would be boring to live in a world where all the people were the same? We should want information about different cultures as much as we desire foods influenced by other cultures, as well as clothing styles from other cultures. He explained that a person can't truly know who they are without learning about themselves. Reading makes you so smart and helps you excel in all that you do in your journey in life. As Dr. Luke began to wrap up his presentation, all of the students stood and chanted, "Read us a story." And Dr. Luke read a story about how reading changed his life. The students jumped up from their seats when he finished and gave Dr. Luke thunderous applause. Sky could hardly control her joy. She practically leaped into the car. "Grandpa Marv, today was my very favorite assembly ever." "Wow," said Grandpa, "I think I'll put the air on today because you are so full of energy, you might fly out the window." He added, "That's very funny, Grandpa." Sky said as she told Grandpa Marv about the speaker who came from the same country as Mary's father. She told Grandpa Marv almost everything he said, word for word. "Grandpa, the kids thought he was handsome and hilarious. He dressed as nice as you when you wear your suits." "Thank you, Brown Sugar," he said. "Grandpa, I think he convinced the kids that reading is very important and fun. He didn't talk about the comics, though. But Grandma Mary said you learn from anything you read. She said when you have to figure out anything, that when you read, you are getting smarter. Grandma Mary even convinced me to read what I don't like because she told me to, no matter how much I don't want to read something the teacher gives me, if I try to figure out what I was supposed to learn, I will be happy that I learned something new." She is right. One day we had to read about polymers, and I didn't want to read about a word that sounded boring. But after I read the information, I learned that polymers are plastics, and plastics are destroying the planet. That's why Grandma Mary and Mom have stopped using plastic as much. Sky talked from the moment she got in the car and didn't stop, even after she walked into Grandpa Marv's house. "Sky, you are usually starving after school and can't wait to eat your snack. You've been talking for 45 minutes, said Grandpa Marv as he hung his hat. 45 minutes. He said again as he pointed to the kitchen clock. "You've had a very interesting day, but if you don't eat your snack now, you won't have energy to do your homework when you get home." "You're right, Grandpa Marv, I'm starving," said Sky, realizing that today she was more excited than hungry. She laughed at herself. Sky finally stopped talking as she devoured the peanut butter crackers and drank the almond milk. Grandpa Marv set out for her. "As soon as you've finished your snack, I want you to meet me outside by the car." "It will be time to take you home," Grandpa Marv said, as he headed out to water the flowers in the front yard. "Okay," replied Sky. "Ready, Grandpa," Sky said, coming out of the front door with her backpack. A few minutes later, Grandpa Marv was waking Sky up as she pulled up to her house. She had worn herself out from all the excitement of her day. Thank you for listening. Again, this is Mary Cole Watson with Wisdom Warriors.